Um, so, I know you've heard me talk about what Dash is and what kind of what the objective is. Maybe it's worth just briefly going over that. So Dash is a product of the Plotly company. Plotly is a Canadian company, and they have I don't know how long they've been around. It's not that long, but they came out with their graphing product that was a little different from other people's products, and a little different in the Python world from Matplotlib, because it when you just use Plotly itself as a plotting chart, it produces, and you run it, and you run it through a Python file, just run the Py file, it produces an HTML file. That's different from others that just produce a static PNG file or some kind of static image file. So you can do a little more with that, but it's not truly interactive. So what people really want, they want to be able to be interactive with of course, their data sets, but especially, and I pointed this out last week, which I think is truly, really the major thing here. I'm going to here, this is on the slides that's available to everybody. It's in the, you probably got them last week, but I added one more page to them, and they're on the shareable drive that I put out there today. So these are examples of Dash. These are all Dash applications, and there's 45 of them. And there used to be, like 2 years ago in 2017 and last year, when I started with Dash, there were only about 8 or 10 of these examples. Now there's 45, and they really have really amped it up in several areas. And one of the areas is this. Okay, I did this last week, but I just want to point out to you how important this is, and this has got to be one of the goals of what these people want to do. These are all machine learning, well, they call it machine learning stuff. Of course, this looks familiar. That's an SVM, and oh, right over here. It's kind of like a simple training of a model, machine learning model, where you can, if you open it up and expand, you'll see you can put in lots of different parameters, and it will restart, and it will give you those graphs of. You can get different graphs, but of course everybody wants to see their accuracy in whatever type of metric that you're doing, and you know, in all these other classes that we see.
Is it time series? Time series?
Pardon me?
Is it time series?
This one?
Yeah.
So these are the options that they give you. So this is these are so these are all image ones, and these are neural net ones. No, it's not time series. The graphs are, these are, you know, the accuracy for training and validation, and this is your cross entropy loss. You know, that's one of the metrics for also, you know, measuring accuracy. But the idea is that people working away, your data scientists working on the models, you know, across a lot of different companies. How do you share that? How do you share your models? How do you get other people to test them, to try them? I think this is the real objective of this. And the reason why they can do this is that what Dash really does just really create a front end. Dash creates a web application for you. It's not a file, it's a web application. Okay, when you run from the Pi file, when it runs, it executes, it's creating a web application that runs. You can only see it in the browser. But it really is creating the front end. But because of the way it's built, that it's built on top of Flask. Anybody know what Flask is in the Python world? Okay, Flask is we call Flask kind of a micro server, but it's very, very scalable because you can add all Python packages to it, and you can get it to connect to whatever you want. So it's in the Python world, and it can connect and run any machine learning files, executables. That's what's going on here, okay? So what you learn in the machine learning classes is those are all, you know, even though it's in Colab, it's a regular program that you're running. And they can be run and told to start, and then you can read their output for accuracy training right from here, okay? Because this is like a window into the Python world. That's what it gives you. Even though it's a web front end, it allows you to interact with stuff that would have been before this. There are ways to do it. You would write all your code in some type of server. You could do it in Flask, and it would do the same stuff on the back end, but then you had to connect with it. So you had to have a total front-end way, normally a JavaScript framework, like Angular, Vue, or React, to connect to the endpoints, server endpoints, okay? You could do it. But to ask a data scientist to do all that, to write the back end, well, let's say they do write the back end, but to ask them to write the front end was asking them to be like JavaScript programmers, and most people cannot do both. So this provides an easy, a window and a way to get at your data without having to be a front end programmer. I know I've said this before, but it's a major, major thing that this company is trying to work through. But I think it's been an obstacle. There's been an obstacle in many industries of how do you do this? And of course, lots of companies want to do this. Okay, and I recommend that anybody who there's in the gallery to take a look at the gallery, because every one of them gives you its code. Every one of them. Okay.
So the one that you just had up there that was on the top.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was watching it while you were talking.
Yeah.
And it looks like there's actually a machine algorithm of some kind running in the background.
Right.
Because it went from 6,000 iterations. I'm assuming the x-axis was iterations.
Right.
It went from 6,000 to 7,000 to 8,000.
Right.
So that, as far as that particular search result in the gallery, that little algorithm is built into that, so you can actually see it work and grow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that is right. But that's really, think about it. That's what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a machine,
you want to spend your time on it.
Right. That's where you want to be, right?
Yeah.
And if you had an easy way to hook it up to the web,
Mm-hmm.
and the person said, listen, I'll show you how to do this in 3 hours, and you'll be able to put all your stuff out in the web.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And you'd say, yeah, that's what I want to
Right.
do. I don't want to mess around with that JavaScript stuff. I want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what this is saying. We can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's the goal. To get an easy way to get there. Okay?
Okay, got it.
All right. Now, I really, really recommend that strongly. I also added this. These have links on them. So the Chris Palmer on a data table, that's a YouTube video. I just watched it a few times this past week, and he's really good. He's one of the, in fact, they call him the real creator of Dash. He works at Plotly, and he is the guy for Dash. And he talks basically about their why they created this. They have a new component in Dash called the data table. It just puts your data out, in an Excel-like form. It looks like they want it to look like Excel. However, it becomes, once your data is there, it's you can do many things with it, and you can send it through callbacks. What we're going over last week, and we're going to do tonight. You can send it to any other, object, graphs. But you can also work with that in any way you want as a data set, and it becomes Excel-like, and people like that. In fact, in the video, he talks about they were stunned. He said they went out to a lot of companies. Like I remember him saying they went to like financial planning companies and data analysis companies, and they asked, "How do you do it? Like, what are your tools?" And he said the primary tool for all these companies was Excel. They were stunned. In this day and age, they're using Excel. And the reason why?
They don't want to do anything.
No, because everybody feels comfortable with Excel. It's easy. I mean, you grow up, like using Excel, right? So everybody says, yeah, I know Excel, I can use it. So they say, okay, we're going to make something that looks like Excel, except it's going to be like 100 times more powerful. And that's what they created with their data table. We're going to do that next week. But I really recommend watching this. Chris Palmer on data table. This guy has, Yoshino has several videos on YouTube. They start kind of easy, and then it gets a little more complicated on using Dash. And then in the Dash guide, that's a link also I created. There's a Dash guide for using the data table, just the data table. Okay, now, where we ended last week was with, we went over callbacks last week, and does everybody remember what a callback does in the Dash scheme of things? Anybody? Anybody? What? It works with. Right. So the callback, besides its name, which is a little, I don't know, it's not the best name because a callback means something very specific in JavaScript. But the callback allows you, is the connective glue for objects, for all the objects that you can work with. And the callbacks allow you to pass data around from one to another. That's their function. Okay? And so we went through a number of examples last week, and I omitted one thing last week that I want to correct. So if we could go to the, do you have the files for today? Okay. So those are the files that I put out there today. A number of them were just the ones we had last week, and I added basic state and callbacks complex, and I added one called Nobel winners. Does everybody have that? Can you bring them into your way of running it through your ENV?
but they're still zipped up in a folder, right?
What?
Are they still, which of those folders do you want us to do?
Well, you already have like a number of.
No, we've got a complex callbacks complex.
Right.
Nobel winners, which one?
So right now the one is basic state.
Okay, that's the one you want us to.
Right now, yeah. So, let me explain what state is. Okay. So this is the program. So this is very simple. It's just like our very simple program that we started with when we started with callbacks. But there's one thing I've added. See under dash dependencies, besides input and output, I've added state. So state is think of state as a property that, an attribute that we're going to supply to the callbacks. So what happens here, in this callback, we're just bringing in, so if it didn't have state, okay, remember this? If it didn't have state, we wouldn't have submit button here, we would just have number in from that input, that HTML input, text input field, okay? The ID is number in, so that would be coming in input right there. And remember what happened last week? Every time that you had a keystroke, or you you clicked or had a keystroke, that would fire an event, and it would activate the callback. So if you kept putting in letters on a text box, remember it fired the callback every time?
Right, well, we did, last week, just to say it a different way, the program is kind of sitting on a read. It's waiting for some input. And when you press the key, it read that key and then turned around and printed it out.
Well, it did something, yeah. It did something, it fired the event.
Mhm.
It fired the event goes to the callback. Callback says, okay, I gotta do something, because you pressed the key, because you've done that. Okay,
And
obviously.
then, so last week, the event went to the callback said print.
Print it out, right. So, we don't want that to happen.
Right.
We want you to put everything, so we want it to be like a standard form, right? In an HTML form that you see on the web, where you type in all your stuff and then you say submit,
Okay.
right? And submit will take all the information and fire it, send it somewhere.
Mhm.
Okay, that's kind of the behavior that we want. And that's what state does. Think of it as a kind of like allowing you to submit things all at once. So, and then just the syntax of it is, for this callback, you're going to use state, just like you're using output and input, the attributes, you're going to use state. And instead of, the input first is coming from, the input comes from the submit button and NCLIX. Let me tell you about NCLIX. NCLIX is a property that it's kind of a hack, really. But it's a property, it's an attribute that you can use on any HTML element. So it keeps count of the clicks for that element, any element, okay? But remember what a callback is looking for. A callback is looking for something that changes. And just clicking on a submit, just clicking on a button itself, well, in standard JavaScript, that would fire an event. But in this world, it's a little different. We want us to have something that changes, some attribute that changes. So in all the examples, this is what Dash always uses. Say, use this. The NCLIX, that's going to change. And then you send that to the callback, and it's going to say, oh, okay. And then number in, state is going to capture, it's like a store. It's going to capture everything from number in, which is your input text. Okay? And when you finally submit or click on a button, that is going to finally activate the callback. So it's really simple. It's just a submit button, but it's looking for something that changed. Okay? Can you run it? You'll see it. It's really simple. But the idea of having to use end clicks makes it somewhat of a hack. The next one will be up there. You got it, word? That's it. That's it. So just type it in the text box. Or you can go back and erase the one. Just putting up the one now because that's the starting out. Right, now hit submit. Well, it works like you think it should work, right? But in order to get that working now, right, can you remember how it worked last week? Every letter you typed in would click. So it's kind of like, it's working exactly like a submit button in a web form. Everybody okay with that? I mean, it's a simple concept, but if you don't have that, it's going to drive you nuts. Okay? All right. So I have this other file that goes. This just does one more thing, but we don't have to look at that for state. That's really the whole idea that state does. But you're going to see it a lot in Dash because obviously you want it to act like a submit button. Okay. Now, let's go to complex callbacks. We're going to pick up, let's go to world indicators. Okay. Now, well, I'm going to pull up what what this is going to look like. This is the Dash guide, which is, I linked to it, which is, I took this example out of here because it's really good. I took it out of more about callbacks. Wait, not that one. Okay. This is it right here. Can you run that? Could you run that code that you pulled up for World Indicators 1? Yeah, it's going to produce this. Okay. Bill, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm going slow.
Okay. You got it? You're okay? You're in good? Okay. Okay. So let's, I think it's a really good idea to play with this to show what it does, and then we can look at the code. So Um, okay, so on the other, have that. If you go back to the code file, do you see where I have? Right here. I have this commented out, the HTTPS. Can you take that? Can you just copy that and put it in your browser? And you'll see that's the data file. I know it should come up okay. It's 85,000 records. But it should come up okay. Do that. Starting with HTTPS to right there. Just that little. Put it in your browser. Yeah, here you go. Okay, and go down. They don't have any value there. Go ahead. Now, after a while, you should see value showing up. Now, it says the year and then value.
So right now, these are all just the year.
They don't have values, but if you keep going down, you'll start seeing all of them have values. Okay, there.
Okay.
So you see that? Yeah, there's 85,000 records there. Okay. Now, with the beauty of pandas is that pandas works very fast, and you'll never know that this is a big file when you look at pandas because it works so fast. But do you see if you go up to the top of the file, you see I think there's 5 columns. Second column is country name. Then the third column is indicator name. And then there's a year, and then there's a value. You see that? You see that? Okay. All right. So what we do, I think this is pretty amazing the way it can be done here, and it can be done so fast. Of course, this is all just using pandas to get the values for you, which is kind of, as I said way back in the beginning, the rough spots in doing this is just getting your data into Plotly the way Plotly wants to work with it. But if you're good with pandas, it makes life really, really easy. So, take a look at this. We create a pandas data frame. Right there, okay? And then right here we call available indicators equals a data frame of just those indicator names, the unique indicator names, okay? And instead of having 85,000 records, the number of records there, I think, I don't know, we can count them, but that is what is used on both of those top drop downs in the figure. We can choose from any one of those unique indicators in those 2 drop downs. They're on the left and the right side of the graph. And if you go to the drop down, you can see roughly how many items are in that. Those would be all your unique indicators. Okay? To me, it looks like around 25 out of 85,000. Okay, so here we go. So we're for those drop downs, we have one on on the left side, one on the right side. So these are going to be identical. There's an HTML div here, and an HTML div down here. This is going to be what's on the left side. The other one's going to be on the right side. You can see that in the style right here, it says give me 48% width of the screen. So that basically is dividing the usable area of the screen up by half. And the drop down here is just, it goes through every value in available indicators. And there are about, I don't know, maybe around 25 of them. Okay? And this is just the initial values. It's fertility rate, total burst per woman. Okay? And these are going to be identical on each side. And this is a radio item. It's a, it's a standard, it's a DCC, which is a dash core component. It's a radio item. And all it's doing is it has two values, label and value for I in whatever's in that list of linear, those texts are linear or log. So when we put that from a callback into the graph, Plotly, only thing Plotly itself, the graph, is going to want to see, it says, what is your type of scale? Is it linear, whatever it is. You can do linear, you can do log, you can do several others, right? So we're going to have, that's all this is doing. It's saying, and the initial value is going to be always going to be linear. Okay, that's just telling the graph we want a linear scale. So it does the same thing, that identical thing, on the right side. Okay? So what you could do is have any one of those indicators plotted against any other indicator. That's the whole thing this is doing, right? In a scatter plot. Now, the whole thing for the graph itself, that main graph of the scatter, that's the line of code for it. Right? It's graph, ID, that's all you need. The graph is the DCC component knowing that a Plotly graph is going to be put in there. Okay? We're going to be putting in there through a callback. And this is that's another thing at the bottom of the graph is it's a year slider, so you can pick individual years in the graph. There's, it's a slider, what we call a slider component. And all it's doing is looking at the min year, the match year, and creates a mark. If you look, there's little marks for every year in the from that list of all the years. All right. So we're back here. Is everybody with me so far?
So both graph and slider are Plotly components, not dash components.
No. Graph, it says DCC on there, right?
Yeah.
DCC graph and then DCC slider.
Mhm.
If you look up top what DCC is,
Mhm.
it's an alias for dash core component.
Okay.
Okay? All it is a component, they created what's the equivalent of a normal slider,
Mhm.
a normal drop down,
Okay.
but they're not HTML elements, they're bigger components, so
Mhm.
that's why they call them components.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So that takes care of all these. You see the, why don't you click on log here and see what happens. Wait. Yeah. So this is the one on the right-hand side, life expectancy, that is the y-axis. So this side takes care of the y-axis, and this side takes care of the x-axis. So that's So it looks like everything does work. All right, so if we go back to the code, okay. This is kind of really what, it's a little more verbose, there's a little more code, but it's the same thing we were doing last week. But look at all there's one output. The output goes to that graph component. See that, that top? Under the callback, one output. That is that graph. Everything's going to go back into the graph component. All the inputs come from the components. There's the x-axis column, the y-axis column, type. The types, you see x-axis type and y-axis type, that's linear or log. The x-axis column, the y-axis column, those are each your x dropdown and your y dropdown. Okay? And then you can see it. You can see how they're used. They call the function, that's the app callback as I mentioned last week, that's a decorator function in Python. It just means it's calling a function, but it adds something more to it. And it makes your functions very, very flexible. So you can add stuff to a core function, and you can have it applied in very different situations. So the function is called update graph. Remember, it's passing in you see all those values on the right-hand side from the inputs? It's passing them in to the update graph. They're the parameters it's passing in. Remember, when you call a function, your names don't have to match. The only thing that matches there is the order of the way they're put in. So see up top, the x-axis column, the value for that, the name inside the function, it becomes x-axis column name. Okay? I think from almost all languages it works the same way. Names of parameters do not have to match. You can call the names anything you want, but inside the function itself, the names have to stay the same. Okay. So, what does it do? The first thing is, it gets the year value. The year value is coming from the slider. Right? Well, I should say, the year is a filter on the data frame. We're going to say, give us 1 year of data from that data frame. That's right there. And then, all this right here, under the return, the data, and the layout, does that look familiar? Because what is that? What is that? That's plotly. Everything inside of here is plotly. And we're going to take whatever this creates and push it back up into that graph component. Okay? So you always have your data, you have your two parts, your data part and your layout. The layout is exactly what you think it is. It's just describing, physical appearance stuff. The title, but down in layout is the type. It says linear, if the x-axis type equals linear, else log. Okay, that's where it uses those. Same thing goes down here for the y-axis, okay? This is just layout stuff. Up here on the data, you can see how it's being filtered. You're filtering the x. The data for the x-axis is the data frame where your indicator name equals to that what's coming out of that drop-down, which is the x-axis column. And your y equals the value where the indicator name equals what's coming out of the y-axis drop-down. Okay? If you understand that, it's really important because that shows you how easy it is to work with data when you're working with in the Python world, when you're working with pandas, and pandas is feeding like a plotting library. Because if you're working in JavaScript, this is really a nightmare to do that kind of filtering and sorting, and there's a lot of code. But when you're using pandas here, you bring in pandas, pandas just says, okay, what's the filter? It gives you that, that's your x-axis, that's your y-axis. Oh, and the text right here is, that's how you know, that's the text is going to be the labels for the axis, and it knows which, what the indicator name is. Believe me, this is a godsend compared to what you have to do in JavaScript. Right. Any questions for this? Does everybody feel okay with pandas, what pandas is doing here? It's just doing basic filtering. This is the way you filter in pandas. You have the name of a column and you let it, it's an interior list you set up within the outer DFF data frame. You just set it up. You said, I want everything, it's kind of like saying it's a where statement, where the indicator name equals that value which comes from the dropdown. It's going to filter out everything else. Okay. The next example is the real meat of this. It's built on top of this because we're going to have two more graphs that work off of this, but it takes the same graph. So we got to understand this one. Should we go on, or should we? Yeah? Okay. Okay. So the next one is, if you want to pull up the World Indicators 2, if you want to pull that up and run it, and I'll pull up what all right, this is what it's going to look like. Okay, this is a real dashboard. Besides what I was talking about before, what Dash allows you to do in the Python world, it's called Dash because it allows you to create dashboards. People want to create interactive dashboards. Okay, so this is a real dashboard. Okay, you can see that it's on Japan. Japan is like the initial value that's fed into it. You will see that in the code. But hover over one of the dots here on the scatter plot. I'll hover over it. See what happens? Just hovering. Watch what hovering does. It tells you that this is Plotly telling you what the point is, what the country is. On the left side, you see the names change, the country names change, just by hovering. Tell me, how cool is that? So what is on the left-hand side we've already done. And if you change any of the, of the indicator names from the drop downs, you'll also see everything change. Like this. Yes. Internet users, hey. And it still has its slider for years. Some years there's no data. Bill, are you okay with that? You got that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, should we look at the code gets a little, the more components you have, the code gets a little more, the code gets longer. And there's one, okay, but I have to show you something. There's one new concept though that is introduced. It's the hover. It's what Dash does when you hover. So I'm in the Dash tutorial here. I'm in the one called Interactive Visualizations. And they go through up here. Okay, it's right here. I'll read it. The DCC graph component has 4 attributes that can change through user interactions: hover data, click data, selected data, and relay out data. These properties update when you hover over points, click on points, or select regions of points in a graph. So it's really just, it does it for you. And this is the example of it. So the selection data and the zoom and relay out data, that's something that I don't think is used too much. But look at this. Look down here, okay? When you hover, just hover over any point. Dash by itself grabs the data from that point. And then the code in the example above just prints it out what it grabs right here. And if you click on the data, it's going to puts it right here. So if I hover over that, you see the data change? Any point, just hovering over it. And if I click on it, it does the same thing. It grabs the same data. As if you were hovering over it. If you click on it, it's going to become part of a property called click data. If you hover over it, it's going to be called hover data. Okay? So that's what Dash is doing for you. You don't have to do anything to get that. Okay, so we're going to be using hover data from when we were hovering over a scatter plot, and it would change all the values change the graphs on the right-hand side, because it's using that attribute, hover data. So, we go down here. Oh, I got the code right here. Okay, so all this is the same that we saw in the first part is the same that we saw in the last example, except, see right here? The DCC graph. Remember, it didn't have anything before? It just had figure, right? And we're going to put a plotly graph right here, DCC graph. Remember, in the example before, that was kind of empty. It was just graph. We didn't have to have anything there because a plotly graph is just going to be pushed in. Now it has an ID, It has to have an ID for why does it have to have an ID?
So that you can refer the properties for it.
So the callback knows so the callback can identify it. Right, that's right. That has to have an ID. And there it has hover data. Okay? So in the hover data, it's saying the only thing it's going to identify in this dictionary is a list of properties, and the only thing it wants to know is country. Okay? Just country. And the initial value is going to be Japan. When it first starts out, you'll see, and when you go to the graph, it's always going to be Japan. And, okay, so then we set the style. This is just basic CSS. We're saying that that's 49% of the width of the page, which makes sense. And then we have two other graphs inside a div, but this div is on the same level as that div, which means in HTML, they're going to be on, and we're saying that they're inline block. So inline block means that they're going to be on the same level in HTML, right? They're going to be side by side. And this whole thing is going to also occupy 49%. So that's going to make them neatly occupy the whole width of the page. But there are two graphs right here. Remember we saw two of them, one on top of the other? That's where they are. One's called the X time series, and one's called the Y time series. Okay, this is okay, so this is the function for the callback that we saw before that is just putting values into the main graph. And this was in the other one that we saw before. However, there's one more thing. See the custom data? That wasn't in the other one. The custom data is well, if you look, the values for the custom data is the same as the value for the text. See that? It's identical. So, we know how to read that. What does it end up giving you? What does custom data there end up giving you? What's the output of custom data?
It's a scattered plot.
So what?
It's a scattered plot.
Well, the return, what it's returning in the data and the layout, that is a scatter plot, the whole thing. Okay? But just that value, custom data, what is that?
Country name?
What?
Country name?
Country name. Exactly. Can you read that? Custom data takes the data frame, the big data frame for the whole thing, right? And it first says, the first filter is the indicator name of the y-axis column, which we had seen before. That's from a drop-down, right? So just give me those values that have that name that you've chosen from that drop-down. And then after that, it's saying, just give me that country name. The country name is also coming from
Country name is what you defined early on, right? When you did your pandas.
that was the initial value.
Mhm.
Oh, yes. Right, so for the first time it comes through, you're right, it's reading that country name.
Mhm.
It's reading Japan, right?
Right.
For any time after that, as we'll see down here, it is, we'll see from any time after that, it's coming from the hover data. Country name.
Mhm.
It has to, right? Russia. Yeah, I don't think there's any references to it. Yeah, it has to be that. Okay. So here's this function, it's just stuck in here. It's not tied to any callback. It's just saying create time series. And this is going to create, even though it's a scatter plot, when you have scatter here, the marks are, those are scattered marks, but there's also lines connecting them. Here it is, y-axis linear. If axis type, you go, oh no, that's the type. But the way we saw it here, this is still considered a scatter plot because it just has marks that you see on a scatter, but they're connected by lines. Okay, take a look at these calls. All these callbacks are kind of identical because each one refers to one box, one graph here, and the other one, and they're kind of identical. So, see the input passed in here is your hover data. And what's your hover data? It would be just the name of the country. Right? When you hover over each point. Okay, right. And here's defining, in this callback, it defines country name using the hover data, the points, the first, the first item of that points list, and custom data, which we had seen up here. Custom data. And then when we have all those, it's just doing basic filtering there. It says return, and then it goes out back and to this function, the create time series function, which is right here. I'm sorry, it's right here. And that creates your plot for you just by passing in these parameters, the axis title and your data frame. And in your data frame, you're going to have a year value and a value. Right. Which comes from, this data frame. So it's kind of, you got to work through it to make sense of it, but it's still just mostly the use of pandas to get the values you want from your data, and then to put it in to a polygraph. If you got that, I mean, I think it demands a little study to go through it, to master it, but once you get it, you realize that you can connect anything like this to create dashboards. And the use of, what makes this a little more complicated, maybe a little more difficult than normal, is that we're using hover data. Hover data is that concept, but you know, it's a little complex, but it allows you a really, really cool feature of just hovering over something and passing data around. Does Tableau have anything like that, Bill?
I'm not sure about the hover part. You
Well,
can have.
if you hovered over things, can
Well,
you attach code to that does stuff?
Well, what you can do is, what do they call it? It's, if you hover over something, it gives you a descriptor
Right,
of
right.
the fields you want to show,
Right.
like you showed there. Now, I don't know if you can make a call to something else. In Tableau, what you would do to do that is say, you build the first chart, you build the second chart, you build the third chart, and there's a setting in there that says share the data across
Right.
all three charts.
Right.
And so, if you make a change in one chart, then it'll
And
show
then it
something.
goes to, yeah,
Yeah,
right. It makes it kind of easy to show the data.
right.
Yeah. But sharing the data, you have to do it, well, you have to do it through callbacks.
Mhm.
This is just their way of doing it.
Early on, you talked about state
Yeah.
as a way of sharing data. I think that's what I got from it. But I don't see that in
No,
this.
it's not really sharing data, it's storing
Okay,
values until you want them to get passed.
okay.
It's kind of a
Oh,
little.
okay, that's right, the context was different. The context was
right.
name, address, phone number,
Right.
submit.
So it
Yeah.
stores them
Right,
until you do something to them.
okay. All right.
So, all right. So I have, for those of you who want to be challenged, I have an interesting challenge for you to try for next week. So, unless, are there any questions on this? I mean, we could go through it more because it is kind of, it is kind of, yeah, there's a lot of code there. But the key parts I've gone over. And the rest is just letting callbacks do what they do. Okay, so let's try this. If we go back to the new files. Okay, I have a file in here called Nobel Winners. It's a JSON file. You can open it up. Is everybody familiar with JSON format is? Yeah. Okay, so JSON format is simply the JSON object consists of a key value pair. So you have the key on the left side, and in JSON the key is in quotes, and on the right side would also be in quotes as well. That is the value. Key value, key value. And in the JavaScript world, well, actually, definitely in the world of the web, the way most information is transported is through JSON. Because JavaScript reads JSON very, very easily. So it's a kind of a standard format. So it's not a CSV file. I guess I could open it up, see what happens. Preview. Okay. From here it doesn't look like much, but you have brackets from one end to from the beginning to the end. Everything's inside of a bracket, and each object is surrounded by curly braces, and within the object you can have many key value pairs. That's a JSON file, JSON format. Okay, so for each JSON object is going to be a Nobel winner, and so all the until the next one, until the end, until you find an end curly bracket. It's all part of the object, and it's all separated. It's key, colon, value, comma, and then another key, colon, value, comma, key, colon, value, comma, until you get to a right curly brace. And so within the curly braces is one object. It just has all those key value pairs. Okay? It's very similar, if you think about it, to a CSV file where the key is your column header and the value is your vertical columns. Anyway, when you put it into any program that reads it, it doesn't matter whether it's CSV or JSON, it comes out the same way. So if you import this just into pandas, what we've done before is for the other files, they were CSV files. You would see a CSV on the end. Okay, instead of having CSV, all you put is JSON for pandas, and pandas knows what to do. You'll see a pandas data frame, just like you would see it for a CSV file. Okay? And I think this is around 900 or so records. I think. This has all the Nobel Prize winners until, I don't know, 2012. Okay. So, there's a book that I think is very good. In fact, it opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I went through this before I found Dash. Okay? And what this guy does, because there's not that many people out there doing this, he said that, all right, I'm going to create my own workflow, because I want to get data, I want to store it, and I want to put it out. I want to do a data viz on it and put it out on the web. Okay? That's what he does, the whole book. He goes out and he does everything. And he shows you how he does it. He goes out and scrapes the data. And he uses Python. For the back end, everything is Python. He uses Python scrapers. Python has like a so-so scraper, and then it has a really powerful scraper. And he actually shows how to use both of them. So-so scraper is something called Beautiful Soup. Bill, you've heard of that, right? Beautiful Soup? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's a Python library, kind of simple library for scraping. But then there's a heavy-duty industrial-sized scraper called Scrapey, which is very powerful. So anyway, he goes out and scrapes all this data for Nobel Prize winners. He goes first to Wikipedia, and then Wikipedia has links on it to go get biographical data from all these people and images, and he does that by scraping. Okay, which is really, I think, it's really cool. And then it gets all the data in, and he has to clean the data, because some of the data, there's a lot of missing stuff, and some of the data is dirty when you get it off the web. So he cleans it. Of course, he shows how he cleans it with pandas. Then he says, okay, because I want this to be permanent, I'm going to create a database. He puts it in, takes you through the database that he works with, puts all the data in a database, then he's ready to bring it out. And he uses Flask. This is the way you had to do it in the Python world. He creates all the data access procedures from Flask to go read from the database. And all those methods are in Flask in Python. And he builds that, and then he says, okay, now I want to put it out in the web, and now I got to use JavaScript. So he uses JavaScript, and he shows how he connects D3, which is the JavaScript data visualization library. He connects that to the endpoints of these methods in Flask. Okay? There's a whole book to do this. I mean, you'll learn a lot. It's really interesting. But not many people do this, know how to do this. He wrote a book on it, and he does it, and the end product is, okay, the end product are these visualizations of Nobel Prize winners. And I thought it would be really fun to say we eliminated all the first half of the book, well, 2/3 of the book, which is grabbing the data, cleaning the data, putting it in a database, and we have this file. That was the result of all this. Get that file. Okay? It's a clean file because it comes from here. He cleaned it. But now we want to visualize it. Okay? Oh. Remember they don't remember that? Where'd that go? The blackboard? Okay. So what, I don't know if I can show the pictures of it, but we should try to do the same thing. It's, well, he gets really involved with it. But what we can do is let's say you start out with a bar chart. So along the x-axis is countries. Okay? And the height of the bar would be the count. That make sense? The count of Nobel Prizes per country over, as long as over the history of Nobel Prizes. Okay? We would have a sloping chart that looks like this. The U.S. of course is #1, and then it slopes down like this, and it has all the countries there. So there's countries over here, down here that just have one Nobel Prize. Then you can split it up by male and female counts per country. Still having countries as the x-axis. And you can also, what something else he does, is just have years as the x-axis. When did Nobel Prize start? Like, was it? I don't. It was the beginning of the 1900s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
1900.
Wasn't it?
I don't know.
It was somewhere back then. But I don't think it was in the 1800s. Maybe in the 1900s. Then it has by year, and then it just has like it has dots for how many were awarded per year. And of course, there's only like in the Nobel Prizes, there's only there's 5 or 6 categories. I think there's 6 now. Peace was added. That was the last category, right? There was always physics, chemistry, science and medicine, economics, peace.
Literature.
Yeah, literature. Did I say that?
Chemistry, economics.
There was what?
Chemistry, economics.
There's chemistry, economics, physics. There's one for like science and medicine, physiology or medicine, something like that.
They're separate.
Biology.
Literature and peace. I think there's only 6. Anyway, he has a graph of So for each year, the x-axis is the year, and there's just dots going up. And the dots are colored based on the 6 different colors by, you know. So I thought it would be fun to try to do this with Dash. We have our data set. So it's just really getting, so I guess what it comes down to is really just getting pandas to do what you want it to do. All you're going to be doing is grabbing, you know, getting the data by country, and then counts. And how hard is that? That's a group by in pandas. A group by per country. Boom. That's one line of code. All right, who's interested? Well, does that sound interesting? I mean, I'll work on it too. But I say the easy part is letting, you know, is the plotting part, dash part, putting it up. But I think it's, well, I thought it would be really interesting because it took this guy a whole book, and it's really, really interesting what he did. All the tools that he used, but we could create the same charts. If we know what we're doing with pandas and getting into Plotly, you can create the same thing in 2 hours. I mean, that's the point. The Dash has made all this really so simple. I don't know, Bill, if you took the same data set in Tableau, you could probably crank out all these things pretty fast too, right?
Yeah, I think so. It would, you could do the sorting, you could give it the raw data,
Yeah.
and then like isolate male and female.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
and
just
just-
filters.
yeah, right.
Because the male and female are each it's going to be, in pandas, it's going to be a column.
Mm-hmm. Right,
Because it's all in there.
right. So yeah, I think you could, each column you're dragging and dropping. And,
Oh, you drag and drop in
yeah,
Tableau, that's right.
yeah.
That's almost cheating. Right. Sound good? Okay. And I also like to get to next week is the data table. What I have on that and Chris Palmer on the data table, I highly recommend it. It's very insightful of why they did it and power and flexibility that it provides. And he says they worked 7 months on this to create that one component, data table component. And it was primarily driven because people want to feel like they want to work in Excel.
So is the alternative to that pandas? If you didn't have data table, what would you use to get the data together?
Well,
slice
the
it
data
up?
table is a dash component
Uh-huh.
that takes its values from pandas.
Okay.
Pandas feeds that. And likewise, you can feed pandas
Mhm.
from the data table because the data table can do all kinds of filtering itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
But the layer provides a certain amount of transparency to that data scientist, so he doesn't have to deal with pandas.
It's like a grid.
But how do you get your data into the application to begin with?
All from pandas.
From pandas. Pandas pulls it in.
Right. Trying to figure out the value add.
So pandas is just a library where you don't have to write your, let's say I have data in files, I've got data in databases, I have to make a REST call or I have to do If I don't have the pandas, then I have to write that code myself.
Right. But
So
then,
the pandas provide you that tool, like, so that like over here in the examples,
Mhm.
right now you are just write one sentence pd.read something, and you give the file, and the file comes panda. Basically, somewhere that code is written, so that's the part of the pandas,
Mhm.
and it goes into df, whatever that df component is or the
Mhm.
variable. So basically, without you writing anything in terms of
Mhm.
whether the file
Right.
exists, what's the format, just the data came into your df, whatever that variable.
Right,
Mhm.
right. I mean, people,
I have to watch the data table video first.
yeah, watch that.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah, watch that. He explains it, why they did it, why they spent so much time doing it.
Right.
Because of the value that it does, they thought it would provide.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, you don't really have, well, you do. Your question might be, why don't you just do it all in pandas? Why do they need this? Why do they need data?
Yeah, kind of.
Right.
Isn't the data table more like a grid? It's like an
It
output,
is.
correct? You
It
click
is.
on it, you
It's
filter
a
the
visual,
results.
it's a visual tool.
It's like
Yeah.
filtering. Can you
Yeah.
do like a pivot on it? Can
What?
you pivot on the columns?
It has everything you want. It has like sorting, everything you want to do. Yeah.
You can create like rows across columns.
Yeah,
It's like AG grid. There's a tool like
yeah, it's meant to be like that, but more, much more visual, interactive type of thing than Panda. I mean, Pandas is really coding, right,
So you can put filters like greater than
Right.
equal to almost.
Right.
It's gonna filter the grid.
right. Believe it or not, there was a time before Pandas in Python where you had to, Python's created like data management type of tools, but that was before, I don't know. I think that was because, that was why everybody was using Excel that way. Because Python didn't really have anything you can match it. I think the one reason why Python became the language for data science, I think it's because of pandas. That it allowed people to like just to do whatever they wanted with their data, clean it really fast, manipulate it to get whatever they wanted really fast. Because before pandas, I don't know, you didn't hear much about Python. Of course, you didn't hear much about data science either. Do you know that people, there's courses still given? Well, it was 2 years ago, a friend of mine was taking a course at the University of Pennsylvania in data science. And I said, well, what tools are you using? Excel? Excel? You just use Excel? You know, it could all be done in, I guess, a lot of it could be done in Excel. I guess.
If your data's already like cleaned and everything, I mean,
What's that?
if your data's already cleaned and merged, and I don't know how.
So does D3 also work with Python like
What? ETL?
D3?
ETL?
No, D3 visualization. D3.
D3 is the charting.
Oh, D3?
Yeah.
So does it work in the same way like Python? You get the data from Python or the data frame and display it in the D3.
What? You're asking how D3 connects? Or?
Connects, yeah. Can it connect to Python? Like, is it similar?
Okay, so there's some people out there that are doing it because it's really, there's some people out there that are doing it. Python now has a lot of starting to have a lot of visualization tools. Okay, so I don't know why you would really want to use D3 unless you really like D3 and you also were a
I don't
JavaScript
know.
person.
D3
But yes, so the way you do it, there are people, in fact, I just saw a very recent article by the guy who thought it was a great way of doing it. He got all his data in, the Python backend, in Flask. It's kind of the same way this guy does it. He pulled all his data in Pandas, he does whatever manipulations he wants to do. That's within the Flask environment, okay? But Flask has this JavaScript side to it. It allows you to build templates, JavaScript templates. And you can stick D3 in there, okay? Then D3 will call any of your functions that you provide within Pandas. And then all D3 wants is to get its data somehow. And it can live within those JavaScript templates in Flask. Yeah. So some people are doing that. So it can be done. I think that the visualization tools in Python are getting a lot easier to do. No, okay. Right. I know why the guy did it. D3 can do something that all other visualization libraries have a lot of problems with. They just can't do it. And that's animation. Very smooth animation. He wanted to have a bar chart animation. Like he had data coming in and he wanted the bar charts to as new data came in, he wanted the bar charts to sort themselves, and animate and redistribute the bars, okay, in a smooth animation. Bill, I don't think Tableau does that well. Plotly doesn't do it. There's something about animation which is very difficult for these other libraries to do. And if you really want these beautiful, really cool looking animated, have your data animated in some way, even on a standard like bar chart or line chart, you want to animate it, everybody eventually gets to D3. Because it just does it better than anyone else. That's why. But if you don't, if you're not doing that though, I would use this. Okay, I hope someone accepts the challenge to come up with even if it's just one graph. But it's not hard to do.
From the JSON level?
What?
From the JSON file you want to create?
From that JSON file, right. Right.
Count of the countries, count of the prices by the countries.
Well,
No,
I'll
but price
leave
winners
it
by
up
the
to
country,
I'll leave it
right?
up to how you want to do it. Okay. There's so many ways to look at the data. Okay. A standard one is to just look at the country distribution. It doesn't have to be that.
And where can I access the files? To access the file?
So I put out on the Meetup. You have that Meetup?
Yeah.
Okay, go to Meetup. I put out today the shareable Google Drive. Should be on there. Go back to the one where it has the. You should have gotten it.
So I came here, I selected this one earlier. Then this is the email.
There should have been an email you got.
This is the email.
Click on that. No. Yeah, go down, go down, go down, go down, go down. There could be something. Hmm. Hmm. Here, notifications or messages,
Okay. Different kind of things.
try messages. No. Notifications. Wait a minute. You got it, didn't you? You got the file?
Yeah, access
Yeah.
the computer over here.
What?
I can access it over here.
It should be on your Google Drive.
Well, no, he wants to get the announcement of it from the meetup. It came on the meetup.
Yeah, it should be on the email. If you get the email, or if you go to the meetup site.
When did you register for the?
Today,
What time?
around
Earlier?
4:35.
Yeah, I think so. You sent at 3.
Oh, so I put them out before that.
Okay.
You still should have access to it.
Can you just forward it, Neeraj, NEE? Sure, thank you.
If you don't get it, send it on the meetup.
On the meetup.
And I'll see it and I'll
Okay,
resend something,
great.
okay?
Thank you. NEER, A as in Apple, J as in Japan,
You're welcome. We'll see you next week.
at vxlpartners.com. vxlpartners.com.
VXL partner.
Correct. I'll check the junk also. Maybe did it go somewhere else?